Arab-Israeli Wars. This series of military conflicts between Israeli forces and various Arab forces, most notably in 1948–49, 1956, 1967, 1973, 1982, 2006, and recent attack by Hamas in 2023. This article focuses on those conflicts that involved Arab forces based outside of Palestine. For coverage of conflicts specific to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, see Israel, Palestine, Intifada, and Gaza Strip.
In November 1947, the United Nations voted to partition the British Mandate of Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. Clashes broke out almost immediately between Jews and Arabs in Palestine. As British troops prepared to withdraw from Palestine, conflict continued to escalate, with both Jewish and Arab forces committing belligerences. Among the most infamous events was the attack on the Arab village of Deir Yassin on April 9, 1948. Days later, Arab forces attacked a Jewish convoy headed for Hadassah Hospital, killing 78. On the eve of the British forces' May 15, 1948, withdrawal, Israel declared independence. The next day, Arab forces from Egypt, Transjordan, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon occupied the areas in southern and eastern Palestine not apportioned to the Jews by the UN partition of Palestine, and then captured East Jerusalem, including the small Jewish quarter of the Old City. The stated purpose of the invasion was to restore law and order in light of British withdrawal, citing incidents such as that at Deir Yassin, and a growing refugee crisis in neighboring Arab countries. The Israelis, meanwhile, won control of the main road to Jerusalem through the Yehuda Mountains, hills of Judea, and successfully repulsed repeated Arab attacks. By early 1949, the Israelis had managed to occupy all of the Negev up to the former Egypt-Palestine frontier, except for the Gaza Strip. Between February and July 1949, as a result of separate armistice agreements between Israel and each of the Arab states, a temporary frontier was fixed between Israel and its neighbors. In Israel, the war is remembered as its War of Independence. In the Arab world, it came to be known as the Nakba, or Nakba, catastrophe, because of the large number of refugees and displaced persons resulting from the war.
1956 Suez Crisis. Tensions mounted again with the rise to power of Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, a staunch pan-Arab nationalist. Nasser took a hostile stance toward Israel. In 1956, Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, a vital waterway connecting Europe and Asia that was largely owned by French and British concerns. France and Britain responded by striking a deal with Israel, whose ships were barred from using the canal and whose southern port of Eilat had been blockaded by Egypt, wherein Israel would invade Egypt. France and Britain would then intervene, ostensibly as peacemakers, and take control of the canal. In October 1956, Israel invaded Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. In 5 days, the Israeli army captured Gaza, Rafah, and Al-Arish, taking thousands of prisoners, and occupied most of the peninsula east of the Suez Canal. The Israelis were then in a position to open sea communications through the Gulf of Aqaba. In December, after the joint Anglo-French intervention, a UN emergency force was stationed in the area, and Israeli forces withdrew in March 1957. Though Egyptian forces had been defeated on all fronts, the Suez Crisis, as it is sometimes known, was seen by Arabs as an Egyptian victory. Egypt dropped the blockade of Eilat. A UN buffer force was placed in the Sinai Peninsula.
Arab and Israeli forces clashed for the third time June 5 to 10, 1967, in what came to be called the Six-Day War, or June War. In early 1967, Syria intensified its bombardment of Israeli villages from positions in the Golan Heights. When the Israeli Air Force shot down 6 Syrian MiG fighter jets in reprisal, Nasser mobilized his forces near the Sinai border, dismissing the UN force there, and he again sought to blockade Eilat. In May 1967, Egypt signed a mutual defense pact with Jordan. Israel answered this apparent Arab rush to war by staging a sudden air assault, destroying Egypt's air force on the ground. The Israeli victory on the ground was also overwhelming. Israeli units drove back Syrian forces from the Golan Heights, took control of the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, and drove Jordanian forces from the West Bank. Importantly, the Israelis were left in sole control of Jerusalem.